How your eye?
Oh, it's cool.
Damn!
Would you want to come back and smoke it?
Personally, I probably won't because I never want to shortchange my audience.
In 1995, a small film shot in just 20 rushed days with less than $3 million turned into a cultural monument for Black America. Friday, a comedy, yeah, but also a statement, breaking the cycle of Hollywood's obsession with pain and tragedy in Black stories. And right in the middle of that breakthrough stood one unforgettable legend, Smokey. Everyone in Hollywood thought Friday was the best thing that ever happened to Chris Tucker, like he was born to play Smokey. But almost 30 years later, Chris dropped a truth bomb that no one saw coming. Friday was one of the worst experiences of my life. What? How could a role that became a global icon turn into a scar he still carries? Turns out it wasn't just acting that broke him, it was a battle with his faith. Tucker confessed that being around real weed every day, being expected to smoke for the role, went against what he believed in. It tore him up inside. That's why he refused to return for next Friday, even when the studio threw $12 million on the table. Can you imagine walking away from that? The truth that's been buried for 3 decades is finally coming to light, and it's deeper than anyone thought. Now let's rewind to Hollywood in the early 1990s. The screen was filled with talented Black actors, but trapped in one tired formula: guns, gangs, blood, and death. Movies like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, and Colors were praised as real, but they only told half the story. They turned entire neighborhoods into symbols of danger and despair, while the warmth, humor, and heart of South Central got erased. But for those who actually lived there, like Ice Cube and DJ Pooh, life wasn't just about violence, it was loud neighbors, jokes on the porch, friends clowning around, and laughter echoing through the struggle. Friday wasn't just a movie, it was a rebellion. A reminder that Black life isn't all pain, it's joy, love, and everyday humanity shining through the darkness. Ice Cube and DJ Pooh were done watching Hollywood drag their community through pain and bullets. They wanted something real, something about life. That's how Friday was born. After finishing the script, the studio finally said yes, but with strict limits. The film had to be shot fast, tight, and dirt cheap. The budget, only $2.33 million. Crazy low for a Hollywood movie in the 90s. They had just 20 days to make it happen. No fancy soundstage, no glossy studio setup. They filmed on a real street in South Central Los Angeles. Everything you see on screen, Craig's lawn, the fence, that tiny living room, the alley, it was all real homes, real spots. The production literally paid for every inch of that neighborhood. That's what gave Friday its raw, authentic energy, the kind of vibe no Hollywood backlot could ever fake. Even with the small budget, the cast lineup turned legendary. Ice Cube stepped in as Craig Jones, the chill, unemployed guy who somehow stayed the most grounded one on the block. Cube actually wrote Craig based on his younger self, calm but ready when it mattered. Then came Chris Tucker as Smokey, the loud, funny, chaos-loving friend who always stirred things up. And who could forget Nia Long as Debbie, the smart and stunning girl next door who instantly became America's crush of the decade. Tiny Lister Jr. brought Debo to life, that towering neighborhood bully who became the blueprint for every tough guy character in pop culture. And finally, John Witherspoon as Mr. Jones, the hilarious sharp-tongued dad who kept the family grounded. Each character popped with personality, turning one ordinary day on the block into a movie that felt alive. Every line, every laugh, every moment hit different. When Friday dropped in theaters on April 26, 1995, not even Ice Cube imagined what was about to happen. This tiny film, shot on a shoestring budget, ended up doing what huge blockbusters couldn't. It became the heartbeat of a generation. It didn't look or sound like anything else from that time. No gang wars, no bloodshed, no tragic endings. Just life, laughter, and real people trying to make it through another day. Made for just $2 million, Friday shocked Hollywood by pulling in nearly $30 million at the box office. But that was only the beginning. Once it hit VHS and DVD, it blew up all over again. Copies were flying off the shelves in South Central and beyond. People watched it again and again until the tape wore out. Smokey's wild lines turned into everyday slang, and his expressions became the first wave of real-life memes. Before the internet had even caught on, people were already saying, "Bye, Felicia." Every Black neighborhood had its own Mr. Jones, its own Debo, its own Smokey. That's why it hit so hard. Friday wasn't some Hollywood fantasy. It was the truest reflection of real life in the community. Nearly 30 years later, it's still one of the most quoted Black films ever made. It launched the stars of Chris Tucker, Nia Long, Tiny Lister Jr., and John Witherspoon, cementing them in pop culture forever. But here's the twist. The same light Ice Cube fought to bring to the screen turned into the darkness that followed Chris Tucker for decades. He later confessed, "Friday is the most haunting film of my life." Why would a comedy carry such a heavy shadow? It all began with an ultimatum, one demand from New Line Cinema that changed everything. When Friday was first taking shape, DJ Pooh, the guy who actually co-created the movie, was supposed to play Smokey, but the studio had other plans. They didn't want an unknown name. They wanted someone with a recognizable face to pull in bigger crowds. Just like that, DJ Pooh was cut out of the role that came straight from his own life. That one move set off a chain reaction of chaos that would change everything. Pooh lost the chance to play his own creation, and Chris Tucker got pulled into a character that wasn't built for him at all. This wasn't just a regular casting swap. It was the start of a long road of pressure, conflict, and emotional strain for Tucker, something he kept bottled up for nearly 30 years. Most people don't even realize it. Friday was never written for Chris Tucker. Smokey was pure DJ Pooh, his vibe, his stories, his real life. He grew up in the streets, sold weed, and joked his way through the struggles. Smokey was DJ Pooh, but Chris Tucker, he came from a totally different world. A church background, clean living, and faith-driven values. He didn't even curse when the cameras weren't rolling. Fans had no idea he was playing someone completely opposite of who he really was. Ice Cube and DJ Pooh wanted Friday to feel like their neighborhood, loud, funny, and full of life. But for Chris, stepping into that world felt like walking on unfamiliar ground. Every scene with Smokey lighting up or clowning around pushed him deeper into anxiety, yet somehow he delivered one of the most unforgettable performances ever, turning Smokey into the wild, hilarious heart of Friday. Behind all that laughter and wild energy, Chris Tucker was quietly living through one of the toughest and most uncomfortable experiences of his entire career. He didn't smoke weed in real life, didn't like it, didn't even want to be around it, but Smokey, that character was built around weed. Nearly every single scene had him lighting up, coughing, zoning out, or chasing another hit. It was nonstop. Day after day, Chris had to act those scenes over and over, while the air around him filled with real smoke. The crew, the extras, even locals hanging out during filming, they were all actually smoking. The smell was everywhere, thick and heavy. Chris wasn't used to it at all, and soon he started feeling the effects. Headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, even a burning throat that made it hard to talk. Entertainment reporter Kevin Fraser later said that Chris kept stepping outside between takes because the haze was making him feel lightheaded, almost like he was really high. But once the camera started rolling, he had to flip the switch. Talk fast, move fast, laugh loud, and look like Smokey was living his best life. The truth, he was forcing himself through it, trying to make people laugh while his body screamed for fresh air. Fans watched and said, "He acts like a real stoner." The crew laughed, thinking it was all part of the fun, but only Chris knew it wasn't acting, it was survival. And soon, the line between the character and the man blurred. Strangers started yelling "Smokey" at him on the street. Kids and adults shouting jokes, asking if he had weed. The world saw him as the real Smokey. But for Chris, that role clashed with something much deeper, his faith. He'd grown up in a strict Christian home, deeply connected to his church since childhood, and Friday had just pulled him straight into a world his conscience couldn't ignore. Chris Tucker always tried to live clean, stay grounded, and be a good example, but Smokey was everything opposite of that. The character was loud, reckless, always high, and constantly causing chaos. For someone like Chris, who valued his faith and image, that clash hit deep. He once said clearly, "I didn't want to represent everybody smoking weed. That wasn't who he was, and it wasn't the message he wanted to send, especially to the younger fans who looked up to him." He didn't want to promote weed culture or glamorize that lifestyle. He didn't want his own kid growing up one day watching Friday and thinking, "My dad was really like that." While the world laughed and quoted Smokey's every line, Chris was quietly struggling, feeling like he was drifting farther from his faith and the man he truly wanted to be. Then came the real heartbreak. Friday twisted how Hollywood saw him. After the movie exploded, every offer he got fit the same mold. Studios labeled him the addict guy, the comic burnout, the goofy stoner, the wild one. Every script that landed on his desk was just another remix of Smokey. No one wanted Chris Tucker. They wanted Smokey again and again. That label trapped him. He went from being a breakout star to feeling boxed in by one role. To Hollywood, his success meant one thing: Chris Tucker equals the stoner character. Nothing more, nothing less. And that realization cut deep. The world celebrated Friday as his rise. But for Chris, it became the scar he didn't want to touch. The pressure, the faith conflict, the identity struggle. It all piled up until the joy of that movie turned into something haunting that followed him for years. The other half of Chris Tucker's pain came from something brutally real: money. When Friday blew up, he only got paid $10,000 for the entire movie. That's right, 10 grand for a film that went on to earn nearly $30 million at the box office and tens of millions more in VHS and DVD sales. Friday turned into a goldmine for New Line Cinema, but Chris barely saw a dime. Ice Cube leveled up, the cast became legends, the movie turned into a cultural milestone, yet Tucker was left with pocket change. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because Friday was a low-budget project and he wasn't a big name at the time. Still, the hurt wasn't just about the paycheck, it was about the principle. Chris was the soul of the movie, but Hollywood never treated him like it. He never came out and said, "I was exploited," but his interviews told the story. He'd often repeat, "They didn't pay me much. I didn't make any real money from Friday." Those words carried pain, because while Smokey's laughter made millions for studios, it left the man behind the smile empty-handed. That unfairness burned deep, and when mixed with his fear of being typecast, it became one of the biggest reasons he walked away from Next Friday. When New Line Cinema planned the sequel in 2000, their top goal was simple: bring Smokey back, no matter the cost. Ice Cube even said publicly, "We were ready to pay Chris Tucker $10 to $12 million to do Next Friday." Think about that, $12 million for just a few days of filming. For a 28-year-old comedian, that was life-changing money. But Chris said no. Turning down that kind of cash stunned everyone. Why would a rising star, not rich yet, not A-list, walk away from millions? The answer was deeper than anyone realized. In his interview with All Urban Central, Chris Tucker laid it out with no filters. "One of the reasons I didn't do the second one is because of the weed." He didn't try to spin it or sugarcoat anything. Friday had turned into a phenomenon, but for Chris it carried a message he didn't want to keep spreading. "I don't want everybody smoking weed. I don't want to represent that," he said. And that was his truth, plain and simple. Smokey might have been the spirit of Friday, but for Chris, he also became a moral weight he couldn't carry anymore. Not even $12 million could buy back his peace, and honestly, he didn't need to, because Chris was already standing at the edge of something way bigger, way cleaner, and perfectly aligned with his faith and values. Right when Ice Cube sent the offer for Next Friday, Chris was in talks with director Brett Ratner for a new project, Rush Hour. The character, Detective Carter, was the total opposite of Smokey. No weed, no cursing, just sharp comedy and action. That was the image Chris wanted for his future. Then everything flipped. Rush Hour hit big, bringing Chris a $3 million paycheck, followed by Rush Hour 2 with $20 million, and Rush Hour 3 with a massive $25 million. In just a few years, he became the highest paid black actor in Hollywood, surpassing legends like Eddie Murphy and Denzel Washington. And it all started because he said no to Smokey. It's not easy to walk away from $12 million, especially when you grew up with very little. But Chris Tucker understood something rare. Some money just isn't worth losing yourself for. Yet the story didn't end there. He didn't walk away only because of weed or faith. There was a deeper pain behind his silence, a hidden rift between Ice Cube and Chris Tucker that's remained buried for nearly 30 years. Behind the scenes, the story wasn't as picture perfect as fans believed. Actor Faison Love, who played Big Worm, was the first to spill the truth. Ice Cube and Chris Tucker stopped talking after the first movie. The fallout didn't come from arguments on set. It came from things left unsaid but quietly felt by everyone around them. Here's the shocker. Nearly 90% of Smokey's legendary lines weren't even in Ice Cube's original script. All those unforgettable quotes. "Puff, puff, give, you got knocked out, I'm broke." And Smokey's wild facial reactions. Every single one of them came straight from Chris Tucker's improv. Fans walked out of theaters quoting Smokey, not Craig. They couldn't stop talking about Tucker's energy, his timing, his hilarious chaos, and that changed everything. Even though no one admitted it publicly, that shift created a quiet rift between the two stars. On one side was Ice Cube, the writer, the mind behind Friday. On the other was Chris Tucker, the face and voice everyone remembered. When the fame leaned too far towards Smokey, the balance cracked. That's a tough space for two creative giants to share peacefully. Then in Next Friday, 2000, fans caught something cold. A sarcastic line early in the movie that took a subtle jab at someone trying to take credit for writing the first film. Fans instantly knew who that shot was aimed at. Chris Tucker. It was like Hollywood's quiet message saying, "Smokey doesn't belong to you." That line hit hard. Tucker had built those moments from his soul, yet he never got the credit. The tension of ego, pride, and recognition only grew from there. Ice Cube felt overshadowed in his own creation, while Chris Tucker felt erased from the legacy he helped shape. Neither Ice Cube nor Chris Tucker ever argued or exchanged angry words. Instead, there was only silence. A heavy, unspoken silence that stretched on for years. Friday brought laughter to millions. But for Chris, that same laughter came wrapped in pain. The tension between him and Cube eventually cooled, but what remained was nearly 2 decades of quiet distance. No reunions, no collaborations, just space where friendship used to live. And while that distance lingered, Friday faced a deeper heartbreak. The loss of the legends who helped give the film its soul. The cast that once filled the screen with life slowly began to fade, leaving behind empty chairs that could never be replaced. First was John Witherspoon, the unforgettable Pops. The man who made everyone laugh with his sharp wit and fatherly charm. In 2019, he passed away suddenly from a heart attack at home. No warning, no goodbye. Fans everywhere mourned. His voice and warmth had become part of their own memories. From that day on, Pops' chair in the Jones living room has stayed forever empty. Then came the loss of Tiny Lister Jr., the mighty Debo. On screen, he was the guy who made the whole block run when they heard his bike rolling up. But in real life, Tiny was gentle, kind, and deeply respectful. In 2020, when COVID-19 hit hard, he got sick. Fever, coughing, and shortness of breath. Friends said he tried to keep working until his body couldn't handle it anymore. His passing, caused by health complications, shook fans everywhere. The giant had fallen quietly. And before both of them, in 2008, came another loss, Bernie Mac. Even with just a short appearance as Pastor Clever, he turned the role into comedy gold. Behind the spotlight, though, he too was fighting his own battles. Proof that sometimes even legends carry unseen pain. Bernie Mac's story was heartbreaking. Behind his unstoppable humor, he battled sarcoidosis, a serious autoimmune disease that attacked his lungs and other organs. In 2008, his condition worsened after a fight with pneumonia, leading to lung and organ failure. At just 50 years old, one of comedy's brightest lights went out right when his career was shining the most. The world lost a legend far too soon. Then came another tragedy, A.J. Johnson, who played Esau, the quick-talking, hilarious hustler from Friday. Fans loved him for his wild energy, but off-screen, his life was filled with struggle. Years of heavy drinking wrecked his health. In 2021, AJ was rushed to the hospital after collapsing and later passed away from organ failure linked to long-term alcohol use. The pain hit deep. It was like Friday had predicted the hard reality faced by so many living on the edge. But those losses weren't the only ghost haunting Friday. Even as fans begged for a final movie to honor the fallen cast, the series was trapped in a legal cage for nearly 20 years. What stopped it? Not the talent, not the money, but rights ownership. After Friday After Next in 2002, Ice Cube wrote multiple versions of a 4th movie. But every time he sent a script to Warner Brothers, the answer was the same. Not suitable, not marketable, not approved. The studio kept the rights locked tight while fans waited for closure that never came. The most painful part? This franchise, a cultural monument for Black America, was shelved by corporate red tape. DJ Pooh said it best, the franchise is being held hostage. Ice Cube himself grew furious, admitting, "They won't let me make the movie the fans deserve." For 2 long decades, he kept fighting, submitting new ideas, negotiating again and again, trying to free Friday from the hands that refused to let it live. For years, fans begged, actors pleaded, and even Hollywood insiders pushed. But Friday stayed locked away, collecting dust for 2 whole decades. One by one, the beloved cast members passed, and people started to believe the franchise was gone forever. Until 2025, out of nowhere, the impossible finally happened. Last Friday was officially greenlit. In early 2025, Warner Brothers changed its executive board, bringing in new leadership that actually understood Black culture and the impact Friday had made. They reopened the case and called Ice Cube back to the table. His first real meeting in nearly 20 years without hearing the word no. Then came the big headline. On April 12th, 2025, according to Movie Insider, last Friday entered pre-production, crew members were hired, the final script was approved, and filming dates were being locked in. For the first time in 2 decades, the world got to say it loud. Friday is officially coming back. The moment the news dropped, the Black community celebrated, Hollywood was stunned, and social media went wild. But one question instantly took over every timeline. Is Chris Tucker coming back as Smokey? Because Smokey isn't just a character, he's an icon. The heartbeat of Friday, 1995. He was the light that made audiences laugh, but also the role that brought Chris Tucker years of inner conflict. So now that Last Friday's moving forward, will he dare to return to the shadow he once ran from? According to Revolt, Chris Tucker's return is still uncertain, but for the first time in over 20 years, he hasn't said no. Talks between him and Ice Cube are reportedly underway. Even Mike Epps confirmed we're hoping to have Chris Tucker back. No final confirmation yet, but all signs point to green. After decades of silence, Smokey might finally step back into the light. One last time to close the story where it all began. The world never forgot Chris Tucker. If Friday was the role that launched him to the sky, then the next 20 years slowly brought him back to earth, quietly and painfully. So how's Chris Tucker doing in 2025? Is he rich? Is he happy? Does he still have that glow that once lit up every screen? At one point, Chris was the highest paid black actor in Hollywood, making $20 million per movie during his rush hour days. But by 2025, reports show his net worth has dropped to around $5 million, a number that stunned fans everywhere. What happened? Years of tax debt. The IRS confirmed he owed nearly $14 million, forcing Chris to sell off much of what he once owned. Back in 2007, he bought a beautiful lakeside mansion in Florida for $6 million, but when the housing market crashed, things fell apart fast. He reportedly owed over $4 million, and the bank moved to foreclose. That mansion, once a symbol of success, had to be sold at a painful loss. For a man who once stood at the top, the fall was rough. But through it all, Chris learned something powerful. Money can buy a house, but it can't buy peace. These days, he lives simply, rarely takes movie roles, and doesn't chase Hollywood paychecks anymore. He's not broke, he's just done chasing fame. In his own words, "I'm not obsessed with money anymore, I want peace." That's where he's at now, calm, grounded, and guided by faith. People know Chris Tucker for his laughter, but his real story is about reflection, faith, and growth. And Hollywood still sees him as the $20 million star. Fans still see the legendary Smokey, but the truth? Chris Tucker is just a man who's lived, stumbled, learned, and chosen peace over chaos. During his rise in the 90s, he even found love, marrying Aja Pryor, a casting director far from the spotlight. Aja Pryor wasn't a celebrity or someone chasing the spotlight. She worked quietly behind the scenes as a casting director. She and Chris Tucker married around 1997, and just a year later, they welcomed their son, Destin Christopher Tucker, in 1998. That same year, Chris's fame exploded with Rush Hour. The money poured in, the cameras never stopped rolling, and his schedule became chaos. But with all that success came distance. Endless filming, touring, and media attention put a heavy strain on the marriage. By 2003, they decided to divorce. No scandal, no public fights, just mutual respect and understanding. Still, it left a mark on Chris's heart that never faded. If you ask him what matters most now, his answer comes easy. His son, Destin, he once said, "Everything changed when my son was born." That's why Chris turns down certain roles. He doesn't want his son thinking Smokey or any wild character defines who his father really is. He keeps a clean lifestyle, no drugs, no alcohol, no Hollywood wild nights, because he wants to be a man his son can respect for his character, not his fame. Chris Tucker's faith is the center of his life. He's not the Hollywood type who talks faith for attention. He truly lives it. He attends church every week, donates to Christian organizations, and stays away from the party scene. That strong belief system is exactly why he walked away from Friday and turned down Next Friday. His values meant more than any paycheck. After his divorce, he was linked to India, Ari, and Vanessa Mendoza, but none of those relationships lasted. Today, Chris hasn't remarried and doesn't flaunt his private life. He lives quietly, focused on family, faith, and peace. And he wants fans to know one thing: he never hated Friday. Chris Tucker never disrespected Friday or denied what it meant. To him, it's culture, it's history, it's a timeless landmark that changed cinema forever. But behind all the laughter that Smokey brought to millions lies a truth Chris has carried for nearly 30 years, a truth that feels like an invisible scar. He wants fans to understand Smokey isn't him. The world fell in love with that wild, hilarious character. But for Chris, Smokey also became the role that made him lose himself for a while. In one rare and honest moment, he confessed, "Friday helped make me famous, but it hurt me more than anyone knows." That's the real legacy. A character who became a cultural icon, but also left a lasting emotional mark on the man who brought him to life. And now, with Last Friday officially moving forward and the chance of Smokey returning after more than 2 decades, one massive question remains: not will Chris Tucker come back, but should he? If Smokey steps onto the screen again, will Chris be ready to face the version of himself that once caused him so much pain, or should he let that chapter stay in the past? What do you think? Should Smokey return in Last Friday? Was Chris Tucker right to walk away from Next Friday? Do you see the deeper struggle behind the laughter now? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think. And hey, don't forget to like, Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the realest, rawest, and most shocking Hollywood stories about the legends you thought you knew. There are countless secrets still buried in Tinseltown, and we're just getting started. See you in the next video.